Hello and welcome to the Help Us Here podcast brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. I discovered I had a problem with porn when I had erectile dysfunction at 16. I then went online, discovered NoFap, tried everything under the sun to solve this problem. Didn't work, met Mary, solved the problem with the Beyond Compulsion method. What we're talking about today is symptoms versus causes of this problem. When I was struggling with the porn, I really tried to solve the symptoms in particular. So things like the erectile dysfunction, right? Like that was the main one at first. But then there was other things like feeling anxious at times, low confidence, feeling sort of unstable, not very sure of myself and things like that, right? So I was like trying to solve all these things. And I did that a lot with the self-improvement kind of stuff. Like I tried anyway with the self-improvement stuff. Didn't really solve the symptoms and things would just be pretty up and down until I learned this method, solve the issue because I actually address like the cause of the symptoms rather than trying to address the symptoms, as we'll get into today. So, Mary, over to you. Do you want to kind of just share why it's important to focus on what's really going on here and maybe clarify some misconceptions around the causes and the symptoms? And yeah, let's just get into it. Over to you.
Well, yeah, we started thinking about this when it came to erectile dysfunction. And, I didn't really even kind of put it together, at the time, but look at how much ED medication is sold. I mean, they advertise it on TV, which is just, I don't know if they do it over there, but yeah, it's just like a whole thing, where they're advertising erectile dysfunction medication. And now it's more and more and more and more, which makes you wonder, like, what does that have to do with pornography addiction? Probably a lot, right? So, but then they focus on treating that symptom, erectile dysfunction. Yeah, I guess there's probably men that have gotten it over time or whatever. They get older or whatever, but now it's like all the young guys are having erectile dysfunction. Okay, well, wait a minute. This didn't just come out of the blue, So, but then they, start selling the medication, treating that symptom, right? But it seems to happen with kind of just all overall for addiction. Like if you think about food, rather than looking at food compulsion, we are treating obesity like it's just the most normal thing in the world. The diabetes medications and just all of the problems that people have from carrying excess weight, it's just like non-stop. If I see one more GLP-1 advertisement, I'm literally going to like smash my television. But yeah, it's crazy. It's just like, now we're treat the symptoms, treat the symptoms, treat the symptoms. Like this is all normal rather than go, wait a second. Food compulsion is what's driving this. Obesity is not normal. And then there's like, even like relationships, right? So have this pornography addiction or other addictions too, affect relationships. So now we have ROCD, relationship OCD. So now we're going to go and we're going to go fix what's wrong with this relationship rather than fix the problem that, is the addiction that is causing the problems in the relationship, which a lot of times is ED, right? Or then it just comes back to like treating the symptoms of the stress, the depression, the anxiety, the boredom, all of the things, treat all of those things rather than realize, okay, being stuck in an addiction causes all these symptoms. So treat that, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we
yeah.
just go right to the symptoms. Yep.
Yeah, Mary, I feel like bringing up food here was the perfect thing to do to illustrate this point. I think we may have spoke about this on past podcasts, maybe once or twice, but with the erectile dysfunction, right, like the way to look at that would be, okay, imagine you're seriously overweight and you've got that problem. What would you do? Would you go and look into your childhood, maybe unravel some trauma, whatever, or would you learn how to stop eating so much food, right? Like if you learn how to stop eating so much food and you start eating a reasonable amount, and again, that isn't about like restricting yourself. That isn't about going on some crazy diet. That isn't about no longer ever eating like sugary food or whatever. That's just about eating a reasonable amount and people know how much is reasonable. If you were to do that and you consume less food, over time you would lose weight, right? With the porn addiction, if you had erectile dysfunction, instead of going and trying to treat like the root cause as such, which could be like, you might think in your head anyway that it's like to do with something you had when you were younger. You might think you're watching the porn because of all these different things. You might think, the erectile dysfunction perhaps is a symptom and maybe it's to do with like your age. Like you could think it's a million different things. But if instead you were just like, okay, I'm going to stop watching porn, just as someone who's overweight stops eating so much food, and then just explore that and see, okay, well, does this symptom go? And like chances are it will. Because basically the point is your behaviors, what you choose to do impacts the symptoms. Like if you behave in a certain way, you're going to have certain consequences,
Yeah.
right? If you change your behavior, you're going to have different consequences, like different results, basically. And it's like, it's so simple to see, but like we've still got a society which are looking into traumas, the past, root causes. Oh, am I looking at the porn because I'm lonely? Is it because I'm bored? Is it because I'm stressed? Is it because of this, that, whatever? Million different things. That isn't the problem to solve. The problem to solve is to stop watching the porn. And the reason you want to watch the porn isn't because of all these different emotions. It's because you keep on watching the porn. Like that's what creates these neural pathways of compulsive desire.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so simple to me now, but I don't know why I couldn't
Yeah.
figure that out for like 15 years or whatever when I was watching the porn or the 10 years I was trying to stop it. It just blows my mind, but it's so obvious now.
Well, everything out there teaches you that the symptoms are the problem.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
kept
exactly.
trying to treat the symptoms. That's why you couldn't figure it out. Because, I mean, look at you think, oh, look at I'm doing all the things that they're telling me to do. And then you would even have some streaks, right? Where you'd be okay for a while. You even had finally quit porn podcast. You think, oh, I'm doing it, I'm doing it. But then, that I came along and said, well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'd relapse
Right.
on
So,
that.
but yeah, that's where it comes back down to, having an education and really understanding this problem, and really getting straight on it. It's like these these symptoms, these things are caused by this addiction. I'm not doing this addictive behavior because of because I am, you know, I mean, were you really that bored and anxious and stressed? I mean, I don't think that many 10-year-olds have a lot of stress and anxiety. I mean, maybe they have more anxiety now because they're all, programmed on short form content, but you know,
I mean, to
it's
be
just,
fair,
yeah,
I feel like when I did actually start watching porn, there were definitely things to be like anxious and scared of and like stressed about. So like the time I started watching porn was around the same time that my mum got diagnosed with cancer. That was quite a challenging time growing up, between 12 and 18. It's quite scary. It was like the big shock in the family sort of thing kind of came out of nowhere. So that was challenging. So don't get me wrong, that may have played a part in me, masturbating every night for the next like 4 years, basically. And I remember actually, it's quite a weird one to share, but I remember like this was crazy, but I said to myself one night, like, I swear on my mum's life, I'll never do this again. Like, just kind of the
right.
motivation, right? So, and I think I felt a bit of guilt
Yeah,
or like, oh shit, like, have I made this problem worse for my mum? Like, as a kid growing up, I wasn't really aware that that wouldn't actually impact things, but whatever, right? So maybe I felt like some guilt around it. But
yeah,
even with that as like the kind of childhood story for me, around the time I started watching porn and perhaps got addicted, it still is not going to solve the issue because I have no control over, my mum and, what happens with her cancer. I don't have control over that. I mean, I have control over how I respond to it. And, I can be there for her and call her most days and, have the time and flexibility to spend with her and get on really well, which I'm very, very lucky about. I have all of that and, thank God she's still here, which is just incredible. But anyway, so I've got that side of things, but I had no control over like what actually happens in terms of her cancer progression, whether she lives or dies. But also I had no control over, um, like nowadays, like in my 20s, like I have no control over what happened when I was 12 or 13 or 14 or 15. What I do have control over, thanks to your education, is what choices I make in the present moment. And like that's how I now think is like all I can do is control my actions moment by moment and take pride in those. So to go and try and solve trauma or the root cause or like trying to solve like loneliness, boredom, stress, whatever, when they aren't the things that are really the problem to solve, it's so backwards because then what happens is let's say you go out and you socialize loads like I started to do a few years ago before you you make a ton of friends, maybe you get busy, maybe you build a business, maybe you're in the gym. You're doing all these things and you think, okay, that's going to solve the boredom, the loneliness, that's going to make me feel better. But then you still relapse and all those consequences come back and you feel like shit again. Like no one has some super fulfilling life, everything's in place and then they're really happy while still relapsing. Like I was speaking to a guy on the phone today. This guy had some crazy, insane, like successful job, 7 children and a wife, still relapsing to porn. That's
Oh,
not a good position to be in. Like,
no.
I don't think he's happy with that. Like, it doesn't matter your circumstances. If you're still engaging in a behavior you want to stop, even if it's irregular, you're not going to be happy with yourself because it's your actions which are really going to determine your happiness at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say like using the porn when you were young, found out your mom had cancer, make you feel guilty and whatever. I would venture to guess that whether your mom had gotten diagnosed or not at 10 years old, being exposed to pornography online, you were going to develop that addiction either way. But then you look to that as, now I feel guilty. And then it, now I have to stop doing this, drives more, deprivation thinking, you get in deeper. And it
Yeah.
really has so very little to do with your mom's diagnosis.
Mary, it's so freaking true. Like, it's actually just so true what you just said. And like, the thing is as well, before meeting you and actually applying this method, because that's the thing that makes me believe in what you say, is like essentially I've lived it, right? Like I've experienced your teaching through my life. But before you, I would have been pissed off if someone said that to me, I think. I would have felt like you're kind of invalidating me because now you're telling me that this hard thing I've gone through had nothing to do with the porn addiction. Whereas now I'm grateful for you saying stuff like that because
Oh,
I
good.
see like obviously that was junky thinking that I had that needed to be corrected for me to have the freedom that I now have. Because
Yeah.
if I had have continued the way I was before you, I would have continued looking for reasons. And the funny thing about it is, I would always have different reasons. So, like, one time it'd be, oh, because of this scenario when I was 12. Then it'd be, oh, maybe I'm addicted because of this scenario when I was 7. Then it'd be, oh, maybe it's because of this when I was 16. Oh, maybe it's that because when I was 4.
Yeah.
There'd be a different reason every bloody week. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it was never going to get me to solve this
Yeah.
problem because the addictive part of the mind wants a reason. That's how it keeps people stuck in that cycle that goes on a lifetime. If unless you actually face this stuff and realize, yeah, there is no reason other than that you got addicted from a young age and that created repetition and wired your neural pathways to have more desire to engage in it
Yeah.
again. And then you weren't taught how to deal with the desire. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. But it's so true. I mean, what we're talking about here is like, and I think it in some ways, it's human nature for people to like when things get really bad, then they want to find a change. But I think, you know, I mean, even just looking at it from a bigger, more global perspective, it made me think of it with all the pesticide use, right? And so like instead of stopping using pesticides, people are just focusing on the cancer that is being caused by the pesticides. Now we're going to treat the cancer and all the hoops they're jumping through rather than going, wait a second, spraying poison on our food. The earth is soaking it up. It's in the water. They focus on the cancer, but it's not until things get bad enough that people are going to try to, solve the actual problem. So,
Mm.
yeah, but the thing is why? Why wait when you have the ability to go, okay, wait a second. This is a problem that causes all this suffering. Why don't we go to, the behavior that is creating it? I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest with you, I know this is getting very like deep and macro or whatever, but you look at global warming, if you believe in
Yeah.
that, I know some people don't, but, and like climate change, right? Well, yeah, there's a lot of solutions now coming out, and some of them have like technology, and some are great. Don't get me wrong, some are really really good, and I know there's a lot of innovation going on in the world, and it is making things better, and that's fantastic. But I feel like the very very root cause of a lot of climate change, global warming sort of problems, they're still psychological. Because if people have compulsive desires for growth, 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 and as a society you're measuring success through economic growth, and that relies a lot of the time anyway on continuing to consume more and more and create more and more, and you're using the Earth's resources to do that, well, how are you really going to succeed? Like, you're up against your own psychology in terms of, yeah, like, anyway, I could get into that for
Yeah.
a whole other episode. It's
Don't
kind of,
take away my Starbucks cups, my big plastic Starbucks cups. I mean, there's so many things that are very simple, that people could just go, oh, if you look at the big picture, what is causing this problem? Well, there's so many things, so many simple things that can be done in the moment, right? And just moment to moment, that would make such a massive change, but like you say, there are good things that are happening,
yeah,
regenerative farming,
yeah,
things that are people are trying. I saw I think it was Denmark. I don't know. So you guys are cooler over there in Europe.
well, in
But they had
Scandinavia,
like
it's pretty advanced and stuff. Yeah,
they have like moss on the front of the stone buildings, So they're all just like green and they like absorb, the bad stuff and whatever. And I thought, over here, people see a little bit of moss. I love moss. People see a little bit of moss. Oh, you got to spray that shit down. You got to scrape it off, get rid of that moss. I'm like, when it gets hot, that moss will just die naturally. So
yeah.
it's cool looking, but it's that short sightedness and people just they don't want to do any work in the moment to like that's going to inconvenience them or cause them any discomfort, to solve a problem.
Yeah, I think it's more the fact that if you've got a whole country that want more and more, and that's just the way they're kind of wired, and that's compulsive at times, right? It's like you're going to compete naturally, and then you're going to drain the Earth's resources. I mean, unless you do find a way to do that in a sustainable way, maybe it can work. But if people didn't want more and more, I feel like the world would be a much better place. In the words of Gala,
Yeah.
people just want more and more.
Well,
Absolutely.
AI, look at AI. I mean, the AI and the water situation is a very good example. People are
Yeah,
not going to give up their asking AI shit. I do it and I think about it when I do it. And I don't do it very often, but I definitely think about what I'm contributing to. I
yeah.
mean, without water, we're fucked. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like on the individual level, it's definitely different, but I guess at the end of the day, it is still all individuals, isn't it? But anyway, we could talk about that all day long. I've got some
yeah, right.
thoughts, but to be honest, I don't really know much about it. So I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who know way, way, way more about that stuff than me. But my point was just behavior change really starts with changing the way you think about stuff, and I think that a lot of problems now are symptoms of irrational thinking, which is often driven by compulsive desire, and then the normalization of this way of thinking that you try solve the problem by looking at the symptoms rather than looking at what led to the symptoms. So hopefully that piece is useful because that's the main point of this podcast. If you'd
Yeah.
like to learn more about the Beyond Compulsion method and changing how you respond to your desires so you can ultimately stop engaging in behaviors that you want to stop, feel free to book in a one-on-one discovery call with myself. We'll leave a link below. Thanks for listening. Thanks as always, Mary, and we'll see everyone in the next one. Goodbye.